On my 28th birthday, my billionaire grandfather smiled at me across the dinner table and asked a question that would destroy my family. Is the penthouse apartment comfortable, my dear? I looked at him in total confusion and replied, What apartment? The color instantly drained from my parents' faces. My grandfather turned to them, his eyes cold as ice, and asked the question that started a war. Then where did my $2 million go? I had no idea that my answer would trigger a forensic investigation that would send my own brother to prison. Before I tell you how I brought down an entire dynasty of liars, let me know where you are watching from in the comments below. Hit like and subscribe if you have ever had to expose a family secret to protect yourself. The nightmare began an hour before that moment at Lamont, the most pretentious restaurant in Atlanta. I sat there clutching my cloth napkin, wishing I could be anywhere else. My sister-in-law Jessica placed a gift bag on the pristine white tablecloth. She smiled that tight fake smile she reserves for people she considers beneath her. "Happy birthday, Zara," she said, her voice dripping with artificial sweetness. "I had to dig through the very back of my closet to find this for you, but I knew you would appreciate it." I pulled out a Louis Vuitton handbag. At first glance it looked expensive, but then I saw the truth. The leather strap was fraying and there was a distinct blue ink stain right across the logo. It was the bag Jessica had used to carry her poodle's accessories 3 years ago. I remembered seeing her dog chewing on it at Thanksgiving. "I noticed you are still carrying that canvas backpack to work every day," Jessica continued loud enough for the entire table to hear. "I just thought you needed something with a little more class. You know, so people do not think my husband's family is neglecting you. It is vintage." My mother Viola took a sip of her Chardonnay and nodded in approval. "Jessica is always so thoughtful," she said without even looking at me. "Zara, take the bag. Do not just sit there looking blank, it is uneducated. That attitude is exactly why you are still stuck in that dead-end administrative job." I stared at the bag. They saw a charity case. They saw Zara, the failure who lived in a rental in East Point and drove a used Honda. They did not see the truth. They did not know that the canvas backpack contained a laptop worth $5,000 and encrypted hard drives holding the financial secrets of Fortune 500 companies. They did not know I was the CEO of Z Audit, the most feared forensic accounting firm in the city. My income last month was over $180,000, but to them, I was nothing. "Thank you, Jessica," I said, keeping my voice calm. I gently pushed the bag aside to make room for the waiter. "But I prefer my backpack. It is clean." The smile vanished from Jessica's face. My brother Tyson slammed his hand down on the table, making the silverware rattle. "What is your problem, Zara? My wife tries to do something nice for you, and you act like you are too good for it. Who do you think you are? You make $40,000 a year pushing paper. You should be grateful we even invited you to a place like this." Tyson settled down. "My father." Desmond interrupted. He adjusted his silk tie, looking around to ensure no one of importance had witnessed the outburst. "Today is your sister's birthday. Let her enjoy the meal. We all know this is the only time all year she gets to eat without looking at the price on the menu." He turned his gaze to me, his eyes full of that familiar condescending pity. "Order whatever you want, Zara. Do not worry about the bill. I will cover it. I know rent is due soon, and you are probably struggling to make ends meet again." I fought the urge to laugh. I was not struggling, I could buy this restaurant. But I nodded and picked up the menu. "Thank you, Dad," I said. I played my role perfectly. The quiet, grateful daughter. The black sheep. The dinner continued like a well-rehearsed play. My mother spent 20 minutes lecturing the waiter on the proper temperature for the wine, making sure the neighboring tables heard her expertise. Tyson bragged loudly about his new cryptocurrency startup, which I already knew was a borderline Ponzi scheme because I had looked into it for a client. Jessica showed off her new 5-carat diamond ring, flashing it under the chandelier light every chance she got. I sat there, invisible, until the heavy oak doors of the private dining room swung open. The room went silent. The restaurant manager bowed low, leading an elderly man with a cane to our table. It was my grandfather, Ezekiel, a self-made billionaire in the logistics industry, the man who built our family name from nothing. He was the only person my parents feared. "Father," my dad stammered, standing up so fast he nearly knocked over his water glass. "We did not think you were coming. The nurse said your back was hurting." "My back hurts. Desmond, I am not dead," my grandfather boomed. He ignored Jessica's attempt to hug him and walked right past Tyson's outstretched hand. He came straight to me. "Happy birthday, my dear." He placed a small velvet box on the table. I stood up and hugged him, smelling the familiar scent of old cigars and expensive cologne. He was the only safety I had ever known in this family. "Thank you, grandfather." He sat down at the head of the table, taking the seat my father had hastily vacated. He looked around the table, his sharp eyes landing on the beat-up bag Jessica had given me. "What is this garbage?" he asked, pointing his cane at it. "That is a gift from Jessica," Mother said quickly. "It is vintage, father. Very stylish." "Vintage," my grandfather scoffed. "It looks like something you find in a dumpster. But I am not here to talk about fashion." He turned to me and smiled gently. And then he dropped the bomb that would blow up our entire world. "Tell me, Zara, how is the apartment in Midtown? Is the view of Piedmont Park as beautiful as the brochure promised? I remember you saying you wanted a studio with north-facing light for your painting." I froze. My hand stopped halfway to my water glass. I blinked, trying to process his words. "Apartment. What apartment, grandfather?" The silence that followed was heavy and suffocating. I saw my mother's skin turn a sickly shade of gray. Beads of sweat instantly appeared on my father's forehead. My grandfather frowned, his bushy eyebrows drawing together. "The penthouse at the Sovereign Tower. I wired $2 million to your parents 3 years ago on the day you finished your master's degree. I told them to buy it for you as a graduation gift, so you would not have to live in that rental property your mother is always complaining about." I set my glass down. The sound of glass hitting marble echoed in the silent room. "Grandfather," I said clearly, ensuring every word was heard. "I never received an apartment. I still rent my house in East Point. Mom and Dad told me that you said I needed to learn independence. They told me you said you would not give me a single dime because you did not want me to be spoiled." Grandfather Ezekiel turned his head slowly toward my parents. The warmth was gone from his eyes, replaced by a cold, terrifying rage. "Desmond. Viola." He said their names quietly, but it sounded like a threat. "Where is my $2 million?" My father pulled out a handkerchief and wiped his face, his hands shaking. "Father, please calm down. There has been a misunderstanding. We thought Zara was too young. We thought she did not know how to manage such a valuable asset. We were afraid she would be taken advantage of or sell it for pennies." "Yes, exactly," my mother chimed in, her voice shrill and desperate. "Zara is so naive, father. We were just protecting her. So we decided to invest the money for her. Into the family trust, to let the money grow." "Invest it?" my grandfather asked. "Then show me the statements. Where are the profits? Why is my granddaughter still paying rent to a landlord?" "Well, the market has been down," Grandfather Tyson interjected, trying to save his parents. "The capital is tied up in some real estate projects. We cannot just liquidate it overnight." Grandfather Ezekiel looked at Tyson, then shifted his gaze to Jessica, who was looking down at her lap, twisting her massive diamond ring. "Investments." He laughed, a dry, humorless sound. "I heard Tyson bought a new Porsche last month." "And Jessica, that ring looks brand new. Is that where the investment went?" He stood up and slammed his cane onto the floor. The sound cracked through the room like a gunshot. "I do not care what kind of games you are playing. I am giving you exactly 48 hours. He held up 2 fingers. 48 hours to return $2 million with interest to Zara's account, or hand over the deed to that penthouse. If the money is not there by then, I will not call my lawyers, Desmond. I will call an independent forensic auditor to go through every single book of the company you are running. And I have a feeling I will find a lot more missing than just $2 million. He turned back to me and patted my cheek. Enjoy your dinner, my love. I will see you soon. He walked out of the room without looking back. The silence he left behind was deafening. The waiters were pressed against the wall, trying to be invisible. The moment the door clicked shut, my mother turned on me. Her face was twisted into a mask of pure hatred, the elegant facade completely gone. "Are you happy now?" she hissed. "You ungrateful little snitch. You set us up, didn't you? You wanted to see us humiliated. You want to see this family destroyed just so you can feel important." I looked at her, and for the first time in years, I did not feel small. I felt powerful. Because I knew something they did not. I knew exactly where the money had gone because I had already tracked it. And I knew that in 48 hours they would not be finding money. They would be walking into a trap I had spent my entire career learning how to build. I picked up the menu. "I think I will order the lobster," I said, "and add a bottle of your most expensive champagne. My father is paying." The atmosphere at the table shifted the moment my grandfather Ezekiel settled his heavy cane against the edge of the pristine white tablecloth. The waiters, sensing the shift in power, retreated into the shadows of the private dining room. My father Desmond loosened his silk tie with a trembling hand, a bead of sweat already forming at his temple despite the aggressive air conditioning. He knew, just as we all did, that grandfather did not make social calls. He made inspections. Grandfather ignored the nervous energy radiating from my parents. He reached into the inner pocket of his bespoke suit and pulled out a small rectangular velvet box, placing it gently in front of me. His hands, weathered and strong, contrasted sharply with the delicate crystal glassware. "Open it," he said, his voice a low rumble that commanded absolute attention. Inside lay a key. It was not a car key or a simple house key. It was a heavy silver security key, the kind used for high-end luxury properties, engraved with the logo of the Sovereign, the most exclusive residential tower in Midtown Atlanta. I stared at the key, confusion clouding my mind. I looked up at him, waiting for the explanation. He smiled, a genuine expression that rarely graced his features when looking at the rest of my family. "It is a spare," he said warmly. "I assumed you might need one for your housekeeper, or perhaps a guest." "Tell me, Zara, how is the apartment? Is the north-facing light in the studio as magnificent as the broker promised? I remember you saying during your graduation that you needed natural light for your painting. I hope the $2 million was spent well on your sanctuary." Time seemed to stop. The ambient noise of the restaurant, the clinking of silverware, the low hum of conversation, all of it vanished, replaced by a deafening ringing in my ears. $2 million. Apartment, sanctuary. I looked from the silver key to my grandfather's expectant face, and then to my parents. My mother Viola had gone rigid, her fork hovering halfway to her mouth, her face drained of all color beneath her heavy makeup. My father was staring fixedly at the centerpiece, his jaw clenched so tight I could see the muscle jumping. I did not understand. I lived in a cramped 2-bedroom rental in East Point where the HVAC system rattled and the neighbors argued until 3 in the morning. I drove a 6-year-old Honda. I had spent the last 3 years believing my grandfather had cut me off to teach me a lesson in self-reliance, a lesson my parents had preached to me every time I declined a family vacation I could not afford. "Grandfather," I said, my voice steady despite the earthquake happening in my chest. "I do not know what you are talking about. What apartment?" The silence that followed was absolute. It was the kind of silence that precedes a detonation. Grandfather Ezekiel slowly turned his head. The warmth vanished from his eyes, replaced by a cold, reptilian stillness. He looked at my father, then at my mother. "Desmond," he said, his voice dangerously soft. Why does my granddaughter not know about the penthouse I purchased for her 3 years ago? Why is she looking at me as if I am speaking a foreign language? My father let out a nervous, breathless laugh. He dabbed his forehead with his napkin, avoiding eye contact. Father, please, this is hardly the place. She is confused. It has been a long day. We can discuss the logistics later. We will discuss it now, grandfather snapped. The cane hit the floor with a dull thud. I sent the wire transfer to your account 3 years ago, $2 million. Specific instructions, title in her name, deed in her hand. Where is the apartment? My mother jumped in, her voice shrill and desperate. We were protecting her. You know how Zara is, father. She has always been so flighty with money. We were afraid she would sell it and waste the proceeds on some foolishness. We decided it was best to invest the capital for her, to let it grow until she was mature enough to handle it. Invest it, grandfather repeated. He leaned back in his chair, his eyes narrowing. You invested my money to protect her from herself. Is that right? Yes. My brother Tyson chimed in, leaning forward with a confidence he did not earn. It is in the family trust, grandfather. The market has been volatile. We moved it into high-yield assets. It is all there, safe and sound. We are just looking out for her future. I watched them weave the web of lies, marveling at the audacity. They were not just lying to him. They were erasing my reality. They were painting me as incompetent to cover their own theft. But they had made a fatal error. They forgot who was sitting at the table. They forgot that I was not just their daughter. I was the CEO of Z Audit. I knew exactly what high-yield assets looked like, and I knew exactly what embezzlement looked like. Grandfather turned his gaze to Jessica, my sister-in-law. She was twisting the massive diamond solitaire on her finger, her eyes darting around the room as if looking for an exit. Investments, grandfather mused. He reached out and took Jessica's hand, pulling it toward the center of the table. The diamond caught the light, fracturing it into 1,000 rainbows. Tell me, Jessica, is this 5-carat stone part of Zara's diversified portfolio? Or perhaps Tyson's new Porsche Cayenne parked with the valet? Is that a depreciating asset you purchased to secure her future? Jessica yanked her hand back, tucking it under the table. Tyson opened his mouth to argue, but grandfather silenced him with a single look. Do not insult my intelligence, grandfather hissed. I built an empire while you were still learning to tie your shoes. I know the smell of a thief. He stood up. He did not look like an 80-year-old man in that moment. He looked like a titan. He looked like Judgment Day. I am not interested in your excuses. I am not interested in your lies about market volatility or protecting Zara. He raised 2 fingers in the air. 48 hours. You have exactly 2 days. My father stood up, his hands shaking. Father, you cannot be serious. We cannot liquidate 48 hours. Grandfather's voice boomed, causing heads to turn at nearby tables. You will return every single cent of that $2 million to Zara's personal account, with interest. Or you will hand over the clean deed to the penthouse. If the money is not there by noon on Friday, I am not calling my estate attorney to write you out of the will. I have already done that mentally. He leaned in close to my father's face. I will call the district attorney, and then I will call an independent forensic accounting firm to audit every single ledger of the logistics company you have been running into the ground. If you stole from your own daughter, I can only imagine what you have been stealing from me. He straightened his jacket, composed himself, and turned to me. His eyes softened, but the sadness in them broke my heart. I am sorry, my dear. I thought I was giving you a home. It appears I gave you a burden. He kissed my forehead, turned on his heel, and walked out of the private dining room. His cane struck the floor with a rhythmic, damning cadence. Click, click, click. The silence that rushed back into the room was heavy and suffocating. For 10 seconds, no one breathed. Then the explosion happened, My mother spun on me, her face contorted into a mask of pure venom. The elegant socialite vanished, replaced by a cornered animal. You did this, she screamed, slamming her hands onto the table. You ungrateful, manipulative little wretch. You planned this whole thing, didn't you? You sat there playing the victim just to set us up. I sat perfectly still, my hands folded in my lap. I did not say a word. I asked calmly. I asked a question. You humiliated us. My father roared, his face turning a dangerous shade of purple. He pointed a shaking finger at me. After everything we have done for you, we put a roof over your head. We fed you. And this is how you repay us, by destroying the family over money. It was my money, Dad, I said. My voice dropped dead. Cool. Grandfather gave it to me. You stole it. Stole? Tyson laughed, a harsh barking sound. We are family, Zara. There is no stealing in family. We used it to maintain the lifestyle this family deserves. A lifestyle you benefit from. Do you think anyone would respect us if we lived like paupers? We needed that money to keep up appearances, to keep the company image intact. You do not need a penthouse. You are single. You have no friends. You are happy in your little shack. Jessica chimed in, her voice dripping with disdain. Exactly. What were you going to do with $2 million, Zara? Buy more ugly backpacks. We actually put that money to good use. We supported the family name. You are just being selfish. Selfish. The word hung in the air. I looked at the lobster thermidor the waiter had just placed in front of me. I looked at the vintage wine Tyson was guzzling to calm his nerves. I looked at the diamond on Jessica's finger and the custom suit on my father's back. They truly believed it. They believed they were entitled to my inheritance because they were the real family, and I was just the background character in their show. They thought they could bully me into submission like they had for 28 years. But they didn't know that the background character had been rewriting the script. My mother grabbed her purse, her eyes wild. You are going to fix this, Zara. You are going to call him right now and tell him you lied. Tell him you knew about the money and asked us to hold it. Tell him you were confused. And if I don't, I asked. Then do not bother coming home for Christmas, she spat. Do not bother calling us when you fail. Because you will fail. You are nothing without us. You are going to call him, or you are dead to this family. I looked at her, really looked at her, and realized the cord had finally been cut. There was no love here. There was only parasitism. I stood up, picking up my vintage bag, the one with the ink stain. I do not think I will be making that call, Mom, I said. And I do not think you need to worry about me failing. You have 48 hours. I would suggest you start selling the Porsches. I walked out of the restaurant, leaving them shouting in my wake. As I stepped into the cool Atlanta night, I pulled out my phone. I didn't call my grandfather. I opened my secure work app and initiated a new file. Subject: Desmond and Viola. Personal asset trace. Priority: urgent. They thought the ultimatum was the threat. They didn't realize the real threat had been sitting at the table with them the entire time. The audit wasn't starting in 48 hours. It was starting tonight. The drive to my parents' estate in Buckhead was a journey through the geography of my own erasure. I followed their Bentley in my 6-year-old Honda, watching them weave through the wrought iron gates of the mansion that I now knew was maintained with money stolen from my future. The house was a sprawling monstrosity of white columns and manicured boxwoods, a testament to the image Desmond and Viola had curated for Atlanta society. To the outside world, it was the seat of a logistics dynasty. To me, it was the stage where I had learned that love was a transaction I could never afford. I parked my car off to the side, away from the fountain, so it would not offend my mother's aesthetic sensibilities. The front door was already open. I could hear Viola's voice shrill and echoing off the marble floors of the foyer before I even stepped across the threshold. Get in here, Zara! Now! I walked into the living room, the one with the silk wallpapers and the furniture we were never allowed to sit on as children. My family was arranged like a tribunal. My father Desmond stood by the fireplace swirling a glass of amber liquid, his face a mask of simmering violence. Tyson was pacing back and forth looking like a caged animal, while Jessica sat on the sofa picking at her cuticles, her eyes darting around the room as if assessing which assets she might lose in a bankruptcy hearing. "Sit down," my father commanded, pointing to a stiff-backed chair in the center of the room. It was the same chair I had sat in when I was 10, and they told me I wasn't pretty enough for pageants. It was the interrogation chair. I remained standing. "I prefer to stand," I said. My voice sounded calm, too calm for a woman who had just been told her entire adult struggle was manufactured by the people in this room. "Do not play games with us, Zara," my mother snapped. She paced toward me, the heels of her designer shoes clicking aggressively on the hardwood. "You have caused enough damage for one night. Do you have any idea what you have done? You humiliated us in front of your grandfather. You made us look like thieves." "You are thieves," I said simply. Tyson lunged forward, his face inches from mine. "Watch your mouth! You do not understand how business works. That money was liquidity. It was necessary to keep the family afloat during the downturn. We were going to pay it back, eventually. But you had to open your mouth and ruin everything." "Pay it back?" I asked, looking at the new Rolex on his wrist. "With what, Tyson? With the profits from your crypto scheme? Or with the equity in this house that is probably leveraged to the hilt?" My father stepped between us, holding up a hand. "Enough. Arguing about the past is pointless. We are in crisis mode and we need a solution. Fortunately, I have drafted one." He walked over to the antique secretary desk and picked up a piece of heavy cream-colored stationery. He held it out to me. It was a script, literally a handwritten script. "Here is what is going to happen," he said, his voice dropping to that reasonable tone he used when he was trying to sell a bad deal. "You are going to call your grandfather, tonight. You are going to tell him that you were confused at dinner. You will tell him that you gave us permission to manage that money 3 years ago because you were overwhelmed by your new job and did not feel ready for the responsibility of home ownership. You will say you asked us to put it into the family trust for safekeeping." I read the paper. It was a confession of incompetence. It painted me as a fragile, incapable child who needed her parents to save her from her own money. It was a lie designed to save their skins and destroy my credibility. "And if I refuse?" I asked, looking up from the page. My mother laughed, a cold, brittle sound that made the hair on my arms stand up. "Refuse? Oh, honey, look around you. You have nothing. You are a 28-year-old administrative assistant living in a rental in East Point. You have no leverage here." "We know your boss," Jessica chimed in from the sofa, a cruel smirk playing on her lips. "Mr. Henderson at the logistics firm, right? He is on the board of the country club with Desmond. One phone call from your father telling him that you are emotionally unstable or that you have been stealing office supplies and you will be out on the street before lunch tomorrow." I stared at them. They were threatening to destroy a career that did not exist. The administrative job at the logistics firm was a cover-a-shell position I maintained to keep a low profile while I built Z Audit. Mr. Henderson was not my boss, he was a client. I had saved his company $4 million in tax liabilities last year. If my father called him, Mr. Henderson would probably laugh in his face. But they did not know that. They saw what they wanted to see. A victim. "You would get me fired?" I asked, letting a tremor of fear enter my voice. "Just to cover up your crime." "It is not a crime, it is family management," my father roared, losing his patience. "And yes, Zara, we will do whatever it takes to protect this family, his reputation. If you do not make that call, you will lose that little job. You will be blacklisted in this town. We will make sure every landlord knows you are a credit risk. You will be destitute. Is that what you want?" I looked at my mother, expecting to see a flicker of hesitation, a moment of maternal instinct kicking in to stop this madness. Instead, I saw only cold calculation. "Do as your father says, Zara," she said, smoothing her dress. It is for your own good. We are the only ones who really care about you. Without us, you are nothing. Just sign off on the story. Make the call and we will forget this ever happened. We might even buy you a nice car. A used one, of course, but reliable. The bribe was the final insult. A used car in exchange for $2 million and my integrity. I looked down at the script one last time. I memorized the handwriting, the desperate loops of my father's penmanship. I folded the paper neatly and placed it in my pocket. I need to think, I said. You do not have time to think, Tyson shouted. You have 48 hours. I turned my back on them. I walked toward the heavy oak door past the portraits of my ancestors, who would be ashamed of the people standing in this room. Where do you think you are going? My mother shrieked. Zara, get back here! We are not finished. I am finished, I said without turning around. I walked out of the house and the heavy door slammed shut behind me, muffling their screams. The night air was thick and humid, filled with the sound of crickets and the distant hum of the city. I walked to my Honda, my steps steady and sure. My hands were not shaking. My heart was not racing. I felt a strange, icy clarity settling over me. I got into the driver's seat and locked the doors. I sat there for a moment in the dark, staring at the lit windows of the mansion. I could see their silhouettes moving frantically inside, pacing, arguing, planning their next move against their own daughter. I reached into the back seat and pulled out my canvas backpack. From inside, I retrieved my laptop, a sleek matte black machine with military-grade encryption. I placed it on the passenger seat and opened the lid. The screen glowed to life, casting a pale blue light on my face. I placed my finger on the biometric scanner. The system verified my identity instantly. Welcome, CEO Zara Williams. The interface of Z Audit appeared. It was a tool I had built to hunt down embezzlers, money launderers, and corporate thieves. It had taken down corrupt CEOs and dishonest politicians. Now it was going to take down the Wilson family dynasty. I typed in a new case file name, Project Inheritance. My fingers flew across the keyboard. I did not need to call Mr. Henderson. I needed to call the bank. I logged into the secure server using the administrative privileges I had retained from a previous audit of my father's company. I bypassed the firewalls with a few keystrokes. The numbers began to flow across the screen. Bank accounts, credit card statements, wire transfers. It was all there. The trail of breadcrumbs my family had left behind in their arrogance. I saw the $2 million transfer from 3 years ago. I saw it move from my trust account to a shell company owned by my father. I saw it drain out into Tyson's gambling debts, into the down payment for Jessica's Porsche, into the monthly payments for the country club. But I found something else. Something bigger. There were transfers to offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands. There were payments to a contractor for a warehouse that did not exist. There was tax fraud on a massive scale. My grandfather's threat to call a forensic accountant was not just a threat, it was a prophecy. My parents had threatened to take away my livelihood. They had threatened to leave me destitute. They thought they were dealing with a helpless administrative assistant. I hit the enter key, initiating a full asset trace. The software began to map their financial destruction. They wanted me to make a call. I picked up my phone, but I did not dial my grandfather. I dialed the number of my lead investigator at Z Audit. It is Zara, I said, my eyes never leaving the glowing screen. Wake everyone up. We have a priority target. I want a full forensic breakdown of Desmond Wilson's personal and corporate accounts. I want every receipt, every email, every deleted text message. On the other end, my investigator paused. The logistics magnate. Is not that your father? Not anymore, I said, watching the lights in the mansion flicker as if the house itself knew what was coming. Now he is just the target. Burn it down. Burn it all down. The drive to my real office took 20 minutes, but it felt like traveling between 2 different dimensions. I left the suffocating humidity of my parents' estate and drove straight into the heart of downtown Atlanta, where the skyline cut a sharp silhouette against the night sky. I steered my Honda into the underground parking garage of the indistinguishable glass tower that housed Z Audit. The security guard at the gate nodded respectfully as I scanned my badge. He did not see a struggling administrative assistant. He saw the woman who signed his paycheck. I took the private elevator to the top floor. The doors slid open to reveal the hive mind of my operation. Even at 2 in the morning, the office hummed with the quiet energy of servers processing terabytes of data. The walls were lined with screens displaying market fluctuations and forensic algorithms. This was my sanctuary. This was where chaos was ordered into neat rows of debit and credit. I sat at my desk and pulled up the file I had started in the car. Project Inheritance. The data I had extracted from my father, his laptop was fully decrypted, now mapped out in a spider web of transactions that told a story of desperate greed. I started with the wire transfer from grandfather Ezekiel, $2 million. It hit my parents' joint account on May 12, 3 years ago. It stayed there for exactly 4 hours. My father Desmond had transferred $500,000 to a shell company listed as Wilson Holdings, LLC. I traced the LLC. It had no employees, no office, and no revenue. Its only activity was paying the initiation fees and monthly dues for the Cherokee Town and Country Club. My father had stolen my future to pay for golf and the privilege of drinking scotch with men who actually owned the money they spent. He had spent $500,000 just to maintain the illusion that he was still a player in Atlanta society, while his logistics company was bleeding cash. I moved to the next tranche. $300,000 went to my mother Viola. I pulled up her credit card statements. Neiman Marcus, Saks Fifth Avenue, a plastic surgeon in Beverly Hills. She had literally injected my inheritance into her face. I looked at a charge for $20,000 for a custom dining room set, the same table where she had sat tonight and told me I was a failure. She had bought the stage for her performance with my money. Then there was Jessica, my sister-in-law, who had sneered at my backpack. I found a series of transfers labeled consultant fees paid to a marketing firm registered in her name. The firm had no website, but the debit card attached to the account was very active. Hermès, Cartier, a Porsche dealership. I clicked on a transaction dated last month, a vintage Birkin bag, $14,000. She had bought a used bag for herself with my money and given me her trash as a birthday gift. The audacity was almost impressive. They had not invested a dime. They had eaten it. They had worn it. They had driven it. But the biggest hemorrhage was Tyson, my brother, the golden child, the cryptocurrency genius. I followed the money trail into his accounts, and what I found was not a business. It was a tragedy. Wire transfers to the Wynn Las Vegas, marker payments to the Bellagio, DraftKings, FanDuel. Tyson was not an investor. He was a degenerate gambler. He had torched over $800,000 in 3 years. The crypto startup was just a cover story to explain why money was moving in and out of his accounts so fast. He was churning cash, trying to win back losses, digging the hole deeper every single day. I looked at a transaction from 2 days ago, a wire transfer to a heavy equipment rental company. He was trying to rent excavators for a construction project that did not exist. He was likely using the equipment as collateral for a loan shark. My parents were not just protecting their reputation, they were protecting their son from having his legs broken, and they expected me to pay for it. They expected me to sign away my future to cover their sins. I leaned back in my chair, watching the numbers glow on the screen. It was disgusting. It was pathetic. But it was not enough. To win this war, I needed to do more than just know the truth. I needed to make them turn on each other. I needed to break the phalanx. I zoomed in on Tyson's recent activity. Amidst the gambling losses and desperate loan payments, there was a transaction that stood out. It was a purchase at Tiffany & Company 3 weeks ago. $50,000, a diamond necklace. At dinner, Jessica had been flashing a new ring, but she was not wearing a necklace. I checked Jessica's social media. No posts about a necklace. I checked the shipping address for the Tiffany order. It was not the condo Tyson and Jessica shared in Buckhead. It was shipped to an apartment complex in Midtown, Unit 404, addressed to a Ms. Chantel Davis. I ran a background check on Chantel Davis. She was a 22-year-old bottle service waitress at a club Tyson frequented. My brother had taken $50,000 of the money stolen from me, money his parents were frantically trying to cover up, and he had spent it on a mistress, while his wife sat at home believing he was a genius investor. I looked at the time. It was 3:30 in the morning. Jessica would be asleep, probably dreaming of the day she would move into my penthouse. Tyson would be awake, pacing, trying to figure out how to keep his house of cards from collapsing before the 48-hour deadline expired. I opened a secure email client. I composed a new message. Subject: receipt for recent transaction. I attached the PDF of the Tiffany receipt, clearly showing the item, the price, and the shipping address to Ms. Chantel Davis. I also attached a single photo I pulled from Chantel's public Instagram account. It showed her wearing the necklace with the caption, "Thank you, Daddy T, for the sparkle." I typed a single line in the body of the email. He spent your share of the inheritance on her. I entered Jessica's email address. I hovered over the send button. This was the moment. This was the match that would light the fuse. Once I sent this, there was no going back. The united front of the Wilson family would shatter. Jessica was greedy and vain, but she was also vindictive. She would not care about family loyalty when she realized she was being played for a fool. She would burn Tyson to the ground, and my parents would be caught in the flames. I thought about the ink stain on the bag she gave me. I thought about her laughing when my father told me to pay the bill. I pressed send. I watched the progress bar complete. Message sent. I closed my laptop and stood up. The office was quiet, but inside my head I could already hear the screaming start. I walked to the window and looked out at the city lights. Somewhere out there in the dark, a phone notification was pinging. A screen was lighting up in a dark bedroom. The investigation was over. Now the demolition began. I picked up my canvas backpack, the one that held my empire, and walked toward the elevator. I needed to get some sleep. Tomorrow was going to be a very busy day. The fallout from my email hit the Wilson estate with the force of a hurricane. While I sat in my secure office watching the digital breadcrumbs of their destruction multiply, my parents' house had turned into a war zone. I was not there physically, but thanks to the remote access, I still maintained to the household security system, a system I had quietly paid to upgrade 2 years ago under a shell company name. I could reconstruct the carnage perfectly. The audio logs painted a vivid picture of a dynasty collapsing under the weight of its own greed. It started at 7 in the morning. Jessica did not wait for coffee. She stormed into the breakfast nook where my mother was trying to maintain a facade of normalcy over grapefruit and herbal tea. Jessica threw her iPhone onto the table so hard it cracked the screen against the imported marble. "You lying piece of trash!" she screamed. Her voice was unrecognizable, raw, and guttural. $50,000. You told me we were broke. You told me we had to squeeze your sister for cash because the trust was illiquid. And you bought a stripper a diamond necklace. Tyson, who had likely been up all night trying to figure out which loan shark to pay first, tried to bluster his way through it. He laughed a nervous hacking sound. "Baby, you are crazy. I do not know what you are talking about. Someone hacked my email. It is spam." "Do not lie to me," Jessica shrieked. "I saw the picture. I saw the shipping address. That is my money, Tyson. That $2 million was supposed to be our safety net. It was supposed to be my upgrade. And you spent it on some girl named Chantel." The sound of shattering glass followed. Jessica had likely thrown the crystal pitcher of orange juice. Then came the sounds of a scuffle. My father Desmond shouted for order, but he had lost control of his house long ago. "You are a loser, Tyson," Jessica yelled, her voice breaking. "You are not a businessman. You are a gambling addict and a fraud. I am leaving, and I am taking the car. I am going to the district attorney, and I am going to tell them everything about the fake warehouse and the tax evasion. I am cutting a deal." That was the trigger. Tyson, the golden child who had never been told no in his life, snapped. There was a sickening thud followed by a sharp cry of pain. Then silence. "You hit me," Jessica whispered. The shock in her voice was palpable. "You actually hit me!" I listened as the dynamic shifted instantly. My mother Viola did not rush to comfort the woman who had been struck. She rushed to protect her son. "Jessica, listen to me," Viola said, her voice low and urgent. "You are not going to the police. You are not going to ruin this family. Think about your reputation. Think about the social circle. If you destroy Tyson, you destroy yourself. You will be the ex-wife of a felon with nothing to your name. I want my money," Jessica sobbed. "I want what I am owed." Viola made a decision, then a decision that showed just how desperate they had become. I heard the sound of a safe opening in the adjacent study. Viola returned moments later. "Here," she said. "Take this. It is my grandmother's sapphire brooch and the diamond tennis bracelet Desmond gave me for our 25th anniversary. They are worth $80,000 easily. Take them, sell them, keep the money. But you keep your mouth shut." There was a long pause. I could imagine Jessica weighing her rage against the glitter of diamonds. Greed won. It always won with her. "Fine," Jessica sniffed. "But I am staying at the Four Seasons until this blows over, and Tyson stays away from me." The front door slammed. The house went quiet again, save for the heavy breathing of three people who knew the walls were closing in. "It is all her fault," Tyson muttered finally. "Zara, she is the one who sent that email. I know it. She is trying to turn us against each other. She is a curse mom." Everything was fine until she opened her mouth at dinner. "She is not a curse," Viola replied, her voice cold and steady. "She is a problem, and problems have solutions. We just need to handle her. She is weak, Tyson. She has always been weak. We just need to remind her of her place." I stopped the recording. They still did not get it. They thought I was a nuisance, a fly buzzing around their heads. They did not realize I was the spider, and they were already wrapped in the web. They blamed me for their violence, for their theft, for their infidelity. It was the classic narcissist defense mechanism. If I point out your bad behavior, I am the bad person. I went home to my rental in East Point. It was a small duplex with peeling paint and a porch that sagged on the left side. I kept it for exactly this reason. It was my camouflage. I changed out of my tailored suit and into a pair of worn leggings and an oversized t-shirt. I washed off my makeup, letting the dark circles under my eyes show. I needed to look tired. I needed to look defeated. I sat on the lumpy couch and waited. I knew she would come. Viola never let a loose end dangle. At noon, a black town car pulled into my driveway. It was not the Bentley. They were trying to be discreet, or perhaps they were afraid the repo man was looking for the luxury cars. My mother stepped out. She looked older than she had the night before. Her makeup was applied with surgical precision, but it could not hide the puffiness around her eyes or the tremor in her hands. She walked up the steps, avoiding the loose board by instinct. She did not knock. She just opened the door and walked in, wrinkling her nose at the smell of old wood and damp carpet. "Hello, Mother," I said from the couch. I did not stand up. She looked around the room, taking in the cheap furniture and the stack of unpaid bills I had strategically placed on the coffee table. She sighed a long, dramatic exhalation of breath. "Look at how you live, Zara," she said, shaking her head. "It breaks my heart. Truly it does. A girl with your potential living like a squatter." "What do you want, Mother?" I asked, keeping my voice flat. She sat down on the edge of the armchair, perching as if she were afraid of catching a disease from the fabric. She clasped her hands together and looked at me with wide, watery eyes. "I came to save you," she said, "and to ask you to save us. Things have gotten complicated at home. Jessica is very emotional right now. She is hormonal." "Hormonal?" I asked, raising an eyebrow. "Yes. Viola nodded, lowering her voice to a conspiratorial whisper. She has not told anyone yet, but she is pregnant, Zara. You are going to be an aunt. It was a lie. A brilliant, disgusting lie. I knew Jessica's medical history because it was part of the background check I ran for the audit. Jessica had her tubes tied 4 years ago. There was no baby. But Viola knew my weak spot. She knew I had always wanted to be an aunt. She was weaponizing an imaginary child to protect her thief of a son. That is surprising, I said. It is a blessing, Viola said, dabbing at dry eyes. But Tyson is under so much stress. He made some bad investments trying to secure a future for the baby. If your grandfather calls the auditors, if the police get involved, it will kill your father, Zara. His heart cannot take it. And Tyson, he could go to prison. Do you want your niece or nephew to be born while their father is in jail? Do you want that on your conscience? She reached into her purse and pulled out a single sheet of paper. It was not the handwritten script from the night before. This was a typed document, formal and terrifying. I had our lawyer draft this, she said, sliding it across the coffee table. It is a simple waiver. It states that you were aware of the investment strategy regarding the $2 million. It states that you authorized us to use the funds for family liquidity purposes. It acknowledges that the apartment was a misunderstanding and that you have been fully reimbursed. I looked at the paper. It was a confession signed by me. It would absolve them of all criminal liability and place the blame squarely on my shoulders. If I signed this, I would be admitting to lying to my grandfather. I would be admitting to being complicit in their fraud. And the reimbursement, I asked. When do I get that? Viola smiled a sad, tragic smile. We are liquidating some assets. It will take time. A few months, maybe a year. But we will pay you back, baby. Every cent. I promise on my life. Just sign the paper. Call your grandfather. Tell him it was all a mistake. Save your family. She reached out and took my hand. Her palms were sweating. Please, Zara. I am begging you. I fed you. I clothed you. I raised you. Do not destroy us over money. I looked at her hand gripping mine. It was the hand that had signed the checks for her plastic surgery while I was eating ramen noodles in college. It was the hand that had slapped me when I asked why Tyson got a car for his 16th birthday and I got a bus pass. I pulled my hand away. I looked at the document. It was their death warrant, but they thought it was their salvation. If I signed it, they would take it to my grandfather immediately. They would think they had won. They would think they were untouchable. And that was exactly where I needed them to be. I picked up a pen. My hand trembled slightly, not from fear, but from the adrenaline of the trap snapping shut. If I sign this, I said, my voice wavering perfectly, will you leave me alone? Will you stop threatening my job? Viola nodded eagerly, her eyes lighting up with predatory triumph. Of course, darling. We just want peace. We will never bother you again. You can go back to your simple life, and we will take care of everything. I put the pen to the paper. I did not sign my name. I made a mark. A small specific squiggle that looked like a signature to the untrained eye, but was actually a code I used in my line of work to denote documents signed under duress. It would never hold up in court as a valid signature, but it would serve as physical proof of their coercion when combined with the hidden camera recording this entire interaction from the bookshelf behind me. I handed the paper back to her. There, I whispered. It is done. Viola snatched the paper. She checked it quickly, folded it, and shoved it into her purse. She stood up instantly, the tears vanishing as if a switch had been flipped. Good, she said, smoothing her skirt. You did the right thing, Zara. Finally. She walked to the door. She did not say thank you. She did not say I love you. She just opened the door and let the sunlight in. Do not come to the gala on Saturday, she said over her shoulder. It is going to be a celebration for the partners. You would just feel out of place. We will send you some pictures. She closed the door. I sat there for a long time, listening to the sound of her town car fading into the distance. She thought she had stripped me of my power. She thought she had buried me. I stood up and walked to the bookshelf. I retrieved the tiny camera hidden between two paperback novels. I checked the footage. The audio was crisp. The video was clear. I had her on tape admitting to the theft, admitting to the fake pregnancy, admitting to the coercion. I walked to the kitchen and poured a glass of water. My hand was steady now. They were going to have a celebration on Saturday. They were going to toast to their cleverness. They were going to think they had gotten away with the heist of the century. I pulled out my phone and dialed my grandfather's private number. It was time to move to phase 2. "Grandfather," I said when he answered. "They took the bait. They have the paper." "Good." His voice rasped over the line. "Are you ready for Saturday?" I looked around my empty, shabby apartment. I looked at the backpack by the door. "Yes," I said. "I am ready. Let them have their party. I will bring the fireworks." The euphoria of my mother leaving with the waiver lasted exactly 45 minutes. That was how long it took for her and Desmond to consult their crooked lawyer and realize that a document signed today did not explain why the money vanished 3 years ago. The waiver was a band-aid on a bullet hole. It protected them from a civil lawsuit from me, but it did not protect them from grandfather Ezekiel's forensic audit. They needed history. They needed a paper trail that went back to the beginning. My phone rang. It was Viola again. Her voice was breathless, tight with a panic she was trying desperately to disguise as maternal affection. "Zara, darling," she said, the sweetness in her tone curdling like milk left in the sun. We ran into a tiny hiccup. "The lawyer says the waiver is wonderful, truly, but grandfather might ask for the original instruction letter. You know, the one where you told us to manage the funds back in 2021. "There is no letter, Mother," I said, leaning against my kitchen counter watching the dust motes dance in the afternoon light. "Because I never gave you the money. You took it." I know," she said dismissively. "But we need to create one. Just a simple letter backdated. I can come pick you up. We can go to the stationer's, get some old paper. It will be a fun little project. Just you and me." The audacity was breathtaking. She wanted me to help them forge evidence. She wanted me to become an active participant in my own robbery. She was trying to lure me back in with the promise of mother-daughter time, a currency she had withheld from me my entire life. "I am not doing that," I said. "Zara, please." Her voice dropped to a whisper. "Think of the family. We sacrificed so much for you." "Sacrificed?" I laughed, a cold, sharp sound. "Let's talk about sacrifice, Mother. Do you remember when I got into Columbia for my undergrad? I had a partial scholarship, but I needed $40,000 a year to cover the rest. You sat me down at that $20,000 dining table and told me the family was illiquid. You told me we were in a tight spot. You cried. You said you wished you could help, but the money just wasn't there." There was silence on the other end. She remembered. "I turned down Columbia," I continued, my voice trembling with a rage I had suppressed for a decade. "I went to state school. I worked nights at a call center to pay for my books. And 2 weeks after I declined my acceptance, Tyson drove into the driveway in a brand new Range Rover, a graduation gift for barely passing his GED. That car cost $80,000, Mother. You had the money. You just didn't want to spend it on me." That was different," Viola stammered. "Tyson needed reliable transportation. He was entering the business world. Appearance matters, Zara. You never understood that. You were always so plain. We knew you would be fine at state school. You are resilient. Tyson is sensitive. He needed the boost." "He needed a boost," I repeated. "And I needed a mother. But you bought him a car. And you bought yourself a facelift." "How dare you?" she hissed, the sweet facade cracking instantly. "I signed your waiver," I said. "I gave you your shield, but I will not help you forge a weapon. I will not backdate a document. I will not commit perjury for you. Figure it out yourself." The mask fell off completely. The Viola who had begged for my help 10 minutes ago vanished, replaced by the woman who had criticized my weight when I was 12 and told me my laugh was too loud when I was 16. "You spiteful little witch!" she screamed into the phone, the volume so loud I had to pull it away from my ear. "We should have left you at the hospital when you were born. You have always been a burden, a black cloud over this family. You think you are so smart. You think you are better than us because you hoard your little paycheck and live in filth. You are nothing. You are a genetic dead end. No wonder you are alone." "I am not alone," I said, looking at the blinking light of my server tower in the corner of the room. "I have the truth." "I am disowning you," she shrieked. "Do you hear me? You are cut off. You are dead to us. When we survive this, and we will survive this because we are Wilsons, and you are just a mistake, I will make sure you never set foot in our house again. I will erase you." "You already did that years ago, Viola," I said. "Goodbye." I hung up the phone. My hands were shaking not from fear, but from the adrenaline of finally saying it out loud. The tuition, the car, the years of being told I was too expensive while they burned money like it was oxygen, it was out. But I knew them. I knew that conversation hadn't stopped them. It had only made them desperate. I opened my laptop and tapped into the audio bug I had planted in my father's study months ago during a rare visit. It was a fail-safe I hoped I would never have to use, but hope is not a strategy. The audio feed crackled to life. "Ungrateful bitch refuses to play ball." Viola was pacing, her voice jagged with fury. She brought up the Range Rover Desmond. "Can you believe that? After all these years, she is still counting pennies. Forget her." My father's voice was low, heavy with scotch and fear. "We don't need her to write it. We just need her signature." "But she won't sign it," Tyson whined. "We just heard her." "She doesn't have to," Desmond said. I heard the sound of a drawer sliding open. "I have her old tax returns in the safe. From when she was in college and I claimed her as a dependent. Her signature is right there on the bottom line." "That was 10 years ago, Dad," Tyson said. "Her signature might have changed." "It hasn't changed enough for an old man with cataracts to notice," Desmond snapped. "Ezekiel won't look that closely. He just wants to see the paper. We scan her old signature, we Photoshop it onto a new document dated May 2021, and we print it on the old heavy bond paper I have in the archive. It will look perfect." "Is that safe?" Jessica asked, her voice trembling. "That is forgery, Desmond. Real forgery." "It is survival," Viola shouted. "Do you want to lose the house, Jessica? Do you want to lose your allowance? Because if Ezekiel audits the company, we lose everything. We do this, or we are on the street." There was a pause, then the sound of movement. "Tyson, get the scanner," Desmond commanded. "Viola, find the paper. We are going to write a letter from Zara. She is going to beg us to invest her money. She is going to say she trusts us implicitly. And by the time we hand it to Ezekiel tomorrow, it will look like it has been sitting in this safe for 3 years." I listened to them scramble. They were doing exactly what I had predicted. They were digging their hole deeper, moving from theft to fraud to federal forgery. They were manufacturing the final nail in their own coffin. I didn't stop them. I didn't call the police. Not yet. I just hit the record button on my console and watched the audio file grow, capturing every keystroke, every scanner whir, every word of their conspiracy. They thought they were forging a shield. They were forging their own handcuffs. And I was going to let them wear them to the gala. The vibration of my phone against the cheap laminate counter of my rental kitchen sounded like a chainsaw in the dead of night. It was 2 in the morning. I was running on caffeine and the cold adrenaline of vengeance, but I picked it up immediately. The caller ID displayed a number I had not seen in years, but recognized instantly. It was the landline from the executive assistant desk at Wilson Logistics. "Hello, Mrs. Higgins," I answered softly. "Zara, is that you?" The voice on the other end was trembling, whispering. "I did not know who else to call. You are the only one who ever treated me like a human being in this building." Mrs. Higgins had been my father's executive assistant for 20 years. She knew where the bodies were buried because she had been forced to dig the holes. 3 years ago, when my father tried to cut her pension to pay for a new boat, I had quietly hired a lawyer to draft a letter that scared him into restoring her full benefits. She owed me. What is happening, Mrs. Higgins? They are in the archive room right now, she whispered. Your father and Tyson. They called in Mr. Vance, the notary, the crooked one who handles the shady real estate deals. They have the old, heavy bond paper from the supply closet, the kind we stopped using 5 years ago. They are printing something, Zara. They are practicing your signature. I found a crumpled test sheet in the trash bin when I went to clear the coffee pot. It looks exactly like yours. I closed my eyes and let out a long breath. They were actually doing it. It was one thing to hear them plotted on a wiretap in the safety of their mansion, but it was another to know they were executing a felony in the headquarters of the family business. They were manufacturing a backdated trust agreement, a document that would claim I had voluntarily handed over my $2 million to their mismanagement. Are they scanning it? I asked. Yes, Mrs. Higgins replied. And they are laughing, Zara. Tyson is joking about how stupid you are. He said you probably do not even remember what you signed 3 years ago. Your father said that once they show this to your grandfather tomorrow, the heat will be off and they can go back to business as usual. Business as usual meant bleeding the company dry while posing as pillars of the community. Mrs. Higgins, listen to me carefully, I said, my voice steady. Do not stop them. Do not let them know you are there. Let them print it. Let them sign it. Let Mr. Vance notarize it. But I need you to do one thing for me. Can you access the copier logs? I can, she said. Download the time-stamped log of that print job I instructed. And if you can get a picture of them in that room, do it. But only if you are safe. I have the security feed on my monitor, she said. I can record it on my phone. Do it, I said. Then go home, Mrs. Higgins. You have done enough. You are a hero. I hung up the phone. I stood in the dark kitchen staring at the refrigerator hum. A normal person would call the police right now. A normal person would rush over there and stop them before the ink dried. But I was not a normal person anymore. I was a forensic accountant. And in my world, you do not stop a crime in progress if that crime is the evidence you need to secure a conviction. If I stopped them now, it was just attempted fraud. It was a family dispute. My father could claim he was just drafting a proposal. He could spin it. But if they finished the document, if they presented it to my grandfather as a legal instrument, they would cross the line into federal wire fraud and forgery. They would be handing me the keys to their prison cells. I needed them to feel safe. I needed them to walk into the lion's den, thinking they were the lion tamers. I sat back down at my laptop and pulled up the Z Audit interface. I opened a new subfolder in Project Inheritance labeled The Smoking Gun. Minutes later, an encrypted file arrived in my inbox from Mrs. Higgins. It was a video. I watched in high definition as my father held a piece of cream-colored paper up to the light, checking the watermark. I watched Tyson sign his name as a witness, laughing as he did it. I watched the notary stamp the document sealing their fate. It was grotesque. It was perfect. They believed they had won. They believed that a piece of paper could rewrite history. They forgot that paper trails are my specialty. They were bringing a forged letter to a forensic audit. I checked the time. It was almost 3 a.m. My grandfather Ezekiel would be awake. He always woke up at 3 to read the international market reports, a habit from his days building the logistics empire from a single truck. I dialed his private line. He answered on the second ring, his voice raspy but alert. Zara, is everything all right? They did it, grandfather, I said. They forged the letter. They have a document that says I gave them the money to invest. They backdated it to 3 years ago. They even brought in a notary to validate the lie. There was a long silence on the other end. I could hear the rhythmic ticking of the grandfather clock in his study. The fool's Ezekiel finally said, his voice heavy with a sadness that broke my heart. I gave them every chance. I gave them an education. I gave them capital. I gave them a name that meant something in this city. and they used it to become common thieves. They are going to bring it to you tomorrow, I continued. They are going to present it as proof that I am the liar. They are going to demand you apologize to them. They are going to try to secure the transfer of the family trust leadership to Dad at the gala on Saturday. What do you need me to do, Zara? I took a breath. This was the hardest part. I was asking an 80-year-old man to look into the eyes of his son and lie. I need you to accept it, I said. When they hand you that forgery, I need you to act relieved. I need you to apologize to them. Tell them you were wrong to doubt them. Tell them you are old, and maybe your memory is fading. Tell them that since everything is in order, you are ready to announce Dad as the new chairman of the board at the gala. You want me to give him the company? Ezekiel asked, his voice rising slightly. No, I said. I want you to give him the rope. If you accept the document, they will feel secure. They will get arrogant. They will show up at the gala expecting a coronation. And that is when we take them down. Publicly, irrevocably. If we do this in private, grandfather, they will just spin it. They will say you are senile. They will fight us in court for years, using your own money to pay for their lawyers. We have to end this in front of everyone. We have to show the board, the shareholders, and the society they care so much about exactly who they are. There was another silence. Then I heard the sound of a match striking. Grandfather was lighting a cigar, something his doctor had forbidden, but he did anyway when he was thinking. A coronation, he mused. A red wedding. You have your grandmother is ruthlessness, Zara. She would have loved this. Is that a yes, grandfather? It is a yes, he said. I will play my part. I will be the confused old man. I will stroke their egos. I will invite them to stand on the stage. But Zara, when the moment comes when you reveal the truth, promise me one thing. Anything, grandfather. Do not miss, he said, because if you strike a king, you must kill him. I will not miss. I promised. I hung up the phone. The trap was set. The bait was taken. My family was sleeping soundly, believing they had outsmarted the black sheep. They did not know the wolf was already inside the house waiting for the dinner bell to ring. I closed my laptop and finally laid down on my lumpy mattress. For the first time in years, I slept without dreaming. I did not need dreams anymore. I had a plan. I pulled my Honda into the driveway of the Buckhead estate at exactly 10 in the morning. The house loomed over me like a white marble mausoleum, its columns stretching up into the gray Atlanta sky. My hands were gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles had turned white. This was not fear. It was the intense focus of an actor about to step onto the stage for the most important performance of her life. I checked my reflection in the rearview mirror. No makeup. Hair pulled back in a messy bun. An old, oversized sweater that made me look smaller than I was. I looked defeated. I looked like the daughter they wanted me to be. I reached into my bag and pulled out the pen. It looked like a standard expensive corporate gift, a heavy black rollerball with gold accents. But it was a piece of surveillance equipment I used for field audits. One click extended the nib. 2 clicks activated a microphone sensitive enough to pick up a whisper from across the room. I clicked it twice. The recording light was invisible, but I knew it was rolling. I walked to the front door. I did not have a key anymore. I rang the bell and waited. The door was opened by Tyson. He was wearing a silk robe and holding a mug of coffee, looking for all the world like a man who had not just committed multiple felonies in the last 48 hours. He looked me up and down and sneered. "You finally showed up," he said, stepping back to let me in. "We thought you might have run back to your little hovel to hide. Mom and Dad are in the study. Do not waste their time, Zara. They have real business to attend to." I walked past him, keeping my head down. The house smelled of lavender and old money, a scent that used to intimidate me, but now just smelled like rot. I entered the study. My parents were sitting on the leather sofa holding hands like a united front of deceit. Jessica was leaning against the desk, scrolling through her phone, looking bored. On the desk in the center of the green leather blotter sat a single piece of paper. The forgery. "Come in, Zara." My father said, his voice smooth and authoritative. He pointed to the wooden chair opposite the desk. The interrogation chair. "Sit down." I sat. I hunched my shoulders, making myself small. I looked at the paper. It was a masterpiece of fraud. The paper stock was slightly yellowed, artificially aged to look like it was from 3 years ago. The font was a standard Times New Roman. The text was brief. It stated that I, Zara Williams, hereby acknowledged receipt of $2 million from the Ezekiel Trust and voluntarily transferred said funds to the management of Desmond and Viola Wilson for investment purposes. It was a lie that would save them from prison and condemn me to a life of subservience. "We need you to sign this," my mother said, her voice soft and coaxing, the way one speaks to a frightened animal. "And then this whole nightmare will be over. We can be a family again." I reached for the paper, my hand trembling. I made sure the tremor was visible. "And if I sign this," I asked, my voice barely a whisper, "Grandfather will not audit the company." "Exactly," my father said. "He just wants to know the money is accounted for. Once he sees this, he will know we were telling the truth. He will know you just forgot." "Forgot," I repeated. I looked up at Tyson, who was leaning in the doorway. "So I am the one who looks crazy? I am the one who forgot I gave you $2 million. Better crazy than broke?" Tyson laughed. He walked over and poured himself a drink from the crystal decanter. "Face it, Zara. You were never going to handle that money well. You are an admin. You file papers. We are businessmen. We know how to leverage capital. We did you a favor. You should be thanking us." I looked at Jessica. She had put her phone down and was watching me with a predator's gaze. "Go ahead, Jessica," I said. "Say it. I know you want to." Jessica smiled, a slow, cruel curving of her lips. She walked around the desk and stood behind me, placing her hands on my shoulders. Her grip was tight, painful. "I think it is adorable," she said. "You really thought you had us, didn't you? You thought you could walk into Lamont with your little backpack and your bad haircut and bring down this family. But you forgot the most important rule of the world, Zara. The house always wins. And we are the house. You are just the help." I let a tear slip down my cheek. It was easy. I just had to think about the little girl who used to wait by the window for a father who never came home. "Please," I said, my voice cracking. "If I sign this, you promise you will not get me fired. You promise I can keep my apartment." My mother sighed, a sound of dramatic exasperation. "Oh, for heaven's sake, Zara, we are not monsters. We just want to protect the legacy. Sign the paper and you can keep your little life. We will even give you a stipend. $1,000 a month. Allowance. Until you get back on your feet. $1,000. From the interest on my own $2 million. It was insulting. It was perfect. I picked up the pen. I clicked it once to extend the nib, ensuring the microphone remained active. "I need to be sure," I said, looking directly at my father. "Just so I understand. You took the money 3 years ago. You spent it on the club and the cars and the jewelry. And now I am signing this to say I gave it to you. That is the deal." My father looked impatient. "Yes, Zara. We reallocated the liquidity. It is standard practice. Stop stalling and sign the damn paper." I leaned over the document. I could feel their eyes on me, heavy with anticipation and greed. They were so close to getting away with it. They could taste the victory. I put the pen to the paper. I wrote my name. I used the signature they expected, the looping, childish scrawl I had used in high school, not the sharp professional signature I used on audit reports. I finished the last letter and put the pen down. "There," I said. "It is done." My father snatched the paper from the desk before the ink was even dry. He held it up to the light, checking it, scanning it. A broad smile broke across his face. "Perfect," he breathed. Absolutely perfect. Jessica clapped her hands together, a delighted little sound. Well, that was easier than I thought. I honestly thought you were going to put up more of a fight. But I guess you realized you are just out of your league. You can go now, Tyson said, dismissing me with a wave of his hand. We have calls to make, real work to do. I stood up. I picked up my pen. I slipped it into my pocket. Thank you, I said, for everything. They did not hear the irony. They only heard the submission. My mother waved me away, already reaching for her phone. We will text you about the stipend, she said. Don't call us. We will be very busy preparing for the gala. I walked out of the study. I walked down the long hallway past the mirrors and the art. I walked out the front door and into the fresh air. I did not look back. I got into my car and drove to the end of the block. I pulled over and took out the pen. I plugged it into my laptop. I downloaded the file. 10 minutes later, I saw the notification on my dashboard. My father's phone was active. He was making a call. I tapped into the line. Father, it is Desmond. I heard my grandfather's voice raspy and tired. Desmond, is it done? Yes, father, my father said, his voice booming with confidence. It is all settled. I have the letter right here. Zara came over this morning. She was very apologetic. She admitted she was confused at dinner. The medication she takes for her anxiety. It sometimes muddles her memory. She confirmed she gave us the money to manage years ago. Is that so? My grandfather asked, his voice unreadable. Absolutely, my father lied smoothly. We straightened it all out. The money is safe in the family trust just as we planned. No harm done. We are ready to move forward. I assume the announcement at the gala is still on track. There was a pause, a long, heavy silence. Bring the letter to the gala, Desmond, my grandfather said finally. We will conclude this business on stage. I want the shareholders to see that the family is united. Thank you, father, my father said, relief flooding his voice. You will not regret this. We will make you proud. I will see you Saturday, my grandfather said and hung up. I sat in my car listening to the dial tone. They had done it. They had lied to the man who built their world. They had framed me as mentally unstable. They had signed their own death warrant. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Jessica. Nice try, little girl. Next time, stay in your lane. By the way, I am keeping the bag. I laughed. A genuine, full-throated laugh that shook my frame. She could keep the bag. I was going to take everything else. I put the car in gear and drove toward the city. I had a lot of work to do. I had to edit the audio files. I had to synchronize the video from the hidden camera. I had to prepare the presentation. The gala was in 2 days. It was going to be the event of the season. And I had the best seat in the house. The silence in the study after I left must have been brief, because by the time I reached the end of the driveway, my father's phone was already ringing with the call that would seal his fate. I had tapped into the line remotely, listening through my encrypted earbuds as I drove away from the scene of my supposed surrender. Desmond, it is your father. Grandfather Ezekiel. His voice sounded frail, wavering with a perfect tremor of age and confusion. I received the document you sent over, the letter from Zara. My father put him on speakerphone. I could hear the rustle of fabric as my mother leaned in close, her breath likely hitched in her throat. Yes, Father, Desmond said, his voice smooth as silk. We found it in the archives just as I thought. Zara confirmed everything this morning. She was embarrassed about the misunderstanding at dinner. You know how she gets when she is off her medication. I gripped the steering wheel tight. The lie about medication was a nice touch, a new layer of gaslighting to discredit me. I see. Ezekiel sighed heavily, a sound that conveyed deep exhaustion. I owe you an apology, Desmond. I accused you of theft when you were merely being prudent. I am an old man. Perhaps I am losing my grip on the details. No, father, do not say that, my father soothed, his tone dripping with false humility. You are just protective. We understand. We just want what is best for the family. Yes, the family, Ezekiel agreed. Listen to me, Desmond. I have been thinking. This incident, it has shown me that I cannot manage the granular details of the estate anymore. I am tired. I think it is time. Time for what, father? Time to hand over the reins, Ezekiel said. The family trust, the $50 million liquid asset fund. I want to announce your appointment as the sole trustee and chairman at the gala on Saturday. It will be my retirement speech. I want the world to know that the Wilson legacy is safe in your hands. I heard a sharp intake of breath from the room. They had done it. They had aimed for safety and hit the jackpot. That would be an honor, Father Desmond stammered, trying to contain his glee. I will not let you down. I know you won't, Ezekiel said. Make sure everyone looks their best. Saturday will be a historic night. The line went dead. For a second there was silence in the study. Then the room exploded. I heard the sound of high fives, the clinking of crystal glasses being hastily refilled, and my mother's shrill, victorious laughter. We did it, Tyson shouted. $50 million. We are rich again. We are actually rich. I told you, Desmond roared. I told you the old man was losing it. He bought it hook, line, and sinker. That letter was genius. Zara is a genius for being so pathetic that he believed she would sign it. Viola's voice cut through the celebration. We need to look the part. If we are taking over the empire on Saturday, we cannot show up in last season as Kuchar. I need a new gown. Jessica needs diamonds. Tyson, you need a bespoke tuxedo. But Dad, we are maxed out, Tyson said, his voice dropping. The cards are declined. The accounts are frozen until the transfer goes through next week. Desmond laughed, a reckless, arrogant sound. Who cares about limits? We are going to be worth $50 million on Saturday. Use the reserve line. What reserve line? Jessica asked. The one we opened in Zara's name when she turned 18, Desmond said. I kept the card in the safe for emergencies. It has a $50,000 limit, and she has perfect credit because she never spends a dime. We will max it out today and pay it off next week with the trust money. She signed that waiver, remember? She can't touch us. Let the ungrateful little brat pay for our victory lap. I almost swerved off the road. They were not just stealing my past. They were stealing my credit identity to fund the party celebrating their theft. It was identity fraud on top of wire fraud on top of forgery. It was a layer cake of felonies. I drove straight to my office, my mind racing. Most people would call the credit card company immediately. Most people would freeze the account and scream fraud. But I was not most people. I was a strategist. And I knew that in a criminal case, intent is everything. If they used a card in my name without my permission to buy luxury goods days before a massive financial takeover, it wasn't just theft. It was proof of their absolute moral bankruptcy. It was the cherry on top of the evidence sundae. I sat at my desk, surrounded by the glow of my monitors. I pulled up my personal credit monitoring alerts. I had set them up years ago, knowing my parents' penchant for financial abuse. At 2 p.m., the first alert pinged. Neiman Marcus, Lenox Square, $12,000. I could picture it. My mother standing in the VIP fitting room, sipping champagne, while sales associates fawned over her. She was probably buying a gold lame gown, something flashy, to signal her return to power. She was swiping a card with my name on it, feeling a thrill of dominance with every transaction. Ping, Rolex Boutique, $15,000. That would be Tyson. He needed a new watch to match the fake persona of a successful entrepreneur he was about to debut to the shareholders. He was spending my credit score on his wrist. Ping, ping. Saks Fifth Avenue, $8,000. Christian Louboutin, $4,000. Jessica was getting her share. She was equipping herself for the role of the heiress she thought she was about to become. They were rampaging through the mall like locusts, devouring everything in sight, fueled by the certainty that they were untouchable. They were drunk on hubris. They thought they were spending the trust fund money in advance. They did not realize they were creating a digital paper trail that tied them directly to financial identity theft. Every swipe was a timestamp. Every signature on a receipt was a confession. My phone rang on the desk. It was a restricted number. I knew who it was. It was the fraud detection department of the bank issuing the card. I picked up the phone. Hello? Ms. Williams, this is the fraud prevention department at Chase Bank. The representative said, his voice urgent. We have detected some highly unusual activity on your platinum card, ending in 4098. Multiple high-value transactions in luxury boutiques in Atlanta within the last hour, totaling nearly $40,000. Did you authorize these charges? I leaned back in my chair. I looked at the wall of screens where the spiderweb of my family as corruption was mapped out in red lines. I saw the forgery video. I saw the email about the mistress. I saw the empty bank account that should have held my $2 million. And now I saw this. The final insult, the desperate grasping greed of people who would eat their own children to stay full. If I said no, the cards would be declined. They would be embarrassed at the register. They might go home. They might get cautious. But if I said yes, they would walk into that gala wearing the evidence. They would be standing on stage draped in stolen goods when the police walked in. The prosecutor would be able to point to the dress on my mother's back and say, that was bought with a stolen identity. It was poetic, It was necessary. I took a sip of water. My voice was calm, cold, and steady. I am aware of the transactions, I said. The representative paused, surprised. You are? So you authorized a $12,000 purchase at Neiman Marcus? Yes, I said. My family is doing some shopping for a very special event. They have my full permission. In fact, I expect the spending to continue for the rest of the afternoon. Are you sure, Ms. Williams? The representative asked. This is a significant deviation from your spending patterns. You usually only buy groceries and gas. I am sure, I said. I am feeling generous today. Very well, the representative said, clearly relieved he did not have to file a report. We will note the account. Is there a limit you would like to enforce, just in case? No, I said. Let them swipe. Approve the maximum limit. Let them max it out. I want them to have everything they think they deserve. I hung up the phone. I watched the screen as a new alert popped up. Tiffany and Company, $6,000. They were celebrating. They were toasting to their brilliance. They were laughing at me. I smiled. Enjoy the champagne, Mother. Enjoy the diamonds, Jessica. Wear them in good health. Because on Saturday night you are going to find out exactly how heavy a stolen crown can be. I turned back to my keyboard. I had one more document to prepare. The slide deck for the gala presentation. It needed to be perfect. I wanted the font to be large enough for everyone in the back row to read the numbers. I wanted the audio to be crisp. I dragged the file labeled Neiman Marcus Receipt Fraud.pdf into the presentation right next to the video of my father forging my signature. It was going to be a hell of a show. I woke up on Friday with the kind of clarity that usually only comes after a fever breaks. The 48-hour deadline my grandfather had set was officially over at noon today. My parents had not called him to confess. Instead, they had sent over the forged letter and then gone on a shopping spree with my credit card. They had made their choice. Now it was my turn to make mine. I spent the morning not at my desk but at a private atelier in Buckhead. I did not want a dress that screamed money. I wanted a dress that screamed power. My stylist knew exactly what I needed. She brought out a structural masterpiece in midnight blue velvet. It was sleek, tailored to within an inch of its life, and cost more than the Honda I drove to my parents' house. When I put it on, I did not see the mousy administrative assistant my mother had spent 20 years constructing. I saw the CEO of Z Audit. I saw the woman who hunted corruption for a living. I stood in front of the mirror and adjusted the neckline. For years, I had dressed to disappear. I wore baggy sweaters and scuffed shoes because it was safer to be invisible than to be criticized. Today, I was dressing for war. I was dressing for an execution. By 2 in the afternoon, I was back in the conference room at Z Audit. The mood was somber. My entire senior team was gathered around the mahogany table. But today there was a new face. Special Agent Miller from the FBI Financial Crimes Division. I had reached out to him 2 days ago when the scale of my father's offshore accounts became apparent. But the credit card fraud yesterday, the brazen spending spree across state lines using a card obtained through identity theft, had escalated this from a civil dispute to a federal investigation. Agent Miller looked at the screen where I had displayed the flow of funds. He was a man who had seen everything from Ponzi schemes to cartel money laundering, but even he looked impressed by the sheer stupidity of the Wilson family. "So let me get this straight, Ms. Williams," he said, tapping a pen against his notebook. "They forged a retroactive trust agreement to cover up the embezzlement of $2 million. Then they used your personal credit line without authorization to buy $40,000 worth of luxury goods to wear to the party where they plan to announce their takeover of the entire $50 million estate." "That is correct," I said. "And we have it all on video." I played the clip from the hidden camera in the study. My father's voice filled the room discussing the forgery. Tyson's laughter rang out as he practiced my signature. Jessica is taunting. Agent Miller shook his head. "They really thought they were untouchable, didn't they?" "They still do," I said. "They think the document worked." My grandfather played his part perfectly. He told them he was relieved. He invited them to take the stage tomorrow night. "So what is the play?" Agent Miller asked. "We have enough to arrest them now. We can pick them up at the house tonight." "No," I said firmly. "If you arrest them at home, they will spin it. They will say it is a misunderstanding. My mother will cry to the press about how the government is targeting a prominent black family. They will use their connections to muddy the waters before the truth ever comes out. I need this to be public. I need the shareholders, the board, and their entire social circle to see the evidence before the handcuffs go on. I want them on stage," I continued. "I want them holding the microphone. I want them to think they have won. And then I want you to walk in." Agent Miller considered this. "It is theatrical," he admitted, "but effective. If they are arrested in front of witnesses with the evidence displayed on a giant screen, there is no spin room. We will have agents stationed at the exits," he said, standing up. "We will wait for your signal. Once you display the forensic report, we move in." "Thank you, Agent Miller," I said. My legal team went over the final details. We had prepared a digital packet for every board member that would be emailed the moment I took the stage. It contained the real audit, the forged letter, and the video files. There would be no doubt. There would be no ambiguity. I spent the rest of the evening finalizing the slide deck. It was a masterpiece of forensic storytelling. Slide 1. The initial wire transfer from grandfather. Slide 2. The flow of funds to Tyson represents gambling debts. Slide 3. Jessica represents consulting fees for a company that did not exist. Slide 4. The video of the forgery. Slide 5. The receipts from yesterday represents shopping spree with the fraud alert notifications from the bank. I timed the transitions. I adjusted the audio levels. I wanted every whisper of my mother's betrayal to be heard in the back row. At 9 o'clock, my phone buzzed on the desk. It was a text message. I looked at the screen. It was from Jessica. She must have been feeling particularly vicious tonight. Maybe the champagne from the shopping trip had gone to her head, or maybe she just wanted to twist the knife one last time before she took her place as the new princess of the Wilson Empire. The text read, "Hey Zara, just a friendly reminder about tomorrow night. The gala is black tie strictly. Mom is worried you might show up in something embarrassing like that polyester suit you wore to Thanksgiving. Honestly, it would probably be better if you just stayed home. You do not have an evening gown anyway, and you definitely cannot afford one. Why do not you just order a pizza and watch TV? We will send you pictures of the big announcement. It is going to be a night to remember." I stared at the message. The cruelty was so casual, so effortless. She really believed she was better than me. She believed that because she had married into a family of thieves and spent money she did not earn, she was royalty, and I was a peasant. She had no idea that the dress hanging in my closet cost more than her wedding ring. She had no idea that the police were currently briefing their team on how to arrest her without causing a riot. She had no idea that the pictures she promised to send would be mugshots. I typed my reply, slowly savoring every letter. Do not worry, Jessica. I would not miss it for the world. And do not worry about the dress. I am bringing something much more important. Something you will never forget. I hit send. I watched the delivered notification appear. She did not reply. She probably laughed and showed the phone to Tyson. They probably toasted to their victory one last time. I turned off the lights in the office. The glow of the city below me was beautiful. Atlanta was a city of secrets, but tomorrow night, one big secret was going to come out into the light. I went home to my rental apartment. I packed a small bag, not for the gala, but for afterwards. I knew I would not be coming back here. Once the truth was out, I could finally move into my penthouse. I could finally live the life I had earned. I laid out the blue velvet dress on the bed. I placed the heavy black pen next to it. My weapons. I closed my eyes, but I did not sleep. I visualized the moment, the silence in the ballroom, the look on my father's face, the sound of the truth shattering their lies. It was going to be a night to remember indeed. The grand ballroom of the St. Regis Atlanta was a sea of black ties and sequins, but my mother shone brighter than a supernova. She was wearing the gold lame gown she had purchased with my credit card, a shimmering column of stolen wealth that caught every flash of the photographer bulbs. She held court near the ice sculpture, laughing, her head thrown back, exposing the neck lift that my tuition money had paid for years ago. Beside her, Desmond looked every inch the patriarch in his bespoke tuxedo, one hand resting possessively on the shoulder of Tyson, who was busy checking the time on his new $15,000 Rolex. Jessica completed the tableau draped in diamonds that glittered with the cold fire of fraud. They looked magnificent. They looked untouchable. They looked like a family who had won the lottery, and in their minds they had. They were accepting congratulations from the city elite, shaking hands with board members and smiling for the society pages. They were so busy basking in the glow of their impending coronation that they did not notice the hush that started at the back of the room. It began as a ripple, a break in the conversation that spread outward like a wave. Heads turned, glasses were lowered. The ambient chatter died down, replaced by the rustle of expensive fabric as people shifted to see who had just arrived. The heavy double doors swung open. I stepped into the light. I was not the mousy girl in the polyester suit anymore. The midnight blue velvet dress clung to me like a second skin, absorbing the light rather than reflecting it, making me look like a shadow made flesh. My hair was swept up, revealing the diamond studs that were the only jewelry I wore. I walked with my head high, my steps measured and silent on the plush carpet. But it was not just the dress that silenced the room. It was the man whose arm I was holding. Senator Marcus Sterling, the senior senator for Georgia and the chairman of the Senate Finance Committee. He was a man who did not attend social galas unless they were politically expedient. He was also a client of Z Audit. I had helped his committee uncover a massive pension fund fraud 3 years ago, and he had never forgotten it. When I called him yesterday and told him I needed a +1 for a takedown, he cleared his schedule. I felt the air leave the room. I saw my mother's champagne glass tilt dangerously in her hand. Her eyes widened, fixing on me with a mixture of horror and confusion that was more delicious than any wine. She looked at the dress. She looked at the senator. She looked at me. And for the first time in her life, she did not know what to say. Jessica recovered first. Of course she did. Her jealousy was a reflex faster than thought. She broke away from her circle and marched toward us, her face twisted in a rictus of fake concern. "Zara," she hissed when she got close enough. "What are you doing here? And who is—" Oh my God. She realized who I was with and faltered. Senator Sterling looked down at her with the polite disinterest of a man who dealt with world leaders. "Good evening, Mrs. Wilson," I said, my voice smooth and carrying effortlessly in the quiet room. "You remember Senator Sterling?" Jessica stammered. "Senator, we did not know you were coming. And Zara, this is a private event. Black tie only." She looked at my dress, desperate to find a flaw, a loose thread, a stain, anything she could sneer at. She found nothing. "Ms. Williams is my guest," the senator said, his deep voice rolling over her like thunder. "And I believe this is her family's event, is it not? It would be strange if she were excluded." My father appeared at Jessica's elbow. His face was a mask of forced joviality, but his eyes were darting around the room, assessing the damage, calculating the risk. "Senator Sterling." "What an honor," Desmond said, extending a hand. "And Zara, you look different." "I look expensive, father," I said, taking his hand briefly. "It is amazing what a good tailor can do." He gripped my fingers tight, a warning squeeze. "What are you doing?" he whispered through his teeth. "You signed the waiver. You said you would stay away." "I said I would not miss it for the world," I corrected, pulling my hand back. "And I brought a gift, a contribution to the legacy you are so worried about." Tyson joined the group, looking at me with open hostility. He leaned in, smelling of scotch and expensive cologne. "You are going to ruin this," he muttered. "Get out before I have security throw you out." "You do not belong here, Zara. You are embarrassing us." Senator Sterling stepped forward just an inch, but it was enough to make Tyson recoil. "I would be very careful, young man," he said softly. "Ms. Williams is one of the most respected financial minds in this state. If she says she has business here, I suggest you listen." The music swelled, signaling the start of the presentation. The lights dimmed, focusing everyone's attention on the stage. "It is time," my father said, straightening his jacket. He shot me one last look of pure venom. "Stay here. Keep your mouth shut. We will deal with you later." They walked toward the stage, the four of them moving in formation. They climbed the stairs and took their places behind the podium. My mother arranged her stolen gown. Tyson checked his stolen watch. Jessica smoothed her stolen diamonds. Grandfather Ezekiel was already there, sitting in a wheelchair center stage. He looked frail, his hands resting on his cane. But when he saw me standing in the shadows near the tech booth, he gave a microscopic nod. My father stepped up to the microphone. He beamed at the crowd, the picture of benevolent leadership. "Thank you all for coming tonight," he boomed, his voice amplified across the ballroom. "This is a momentous occasion for the Wilson family. For 50 years, my father Ezekiel Wilson has built this company with his bare hands. He has created a legacy of integrity, strength, and prosperity." Applause rippled through the room. My mother wiped a tear from her eye. "Tonight," Desmond continued, his chest swelling, "my father passes the torch. He has entrusted me and my sons with the future of this great enterprise. It is a responsibility we do not take lightly. We have worked tirelessly to ensure that the Wilson name remains synonymous with trust." I signaled the tech booth. My team was ready. And so Desmond said, turning to grandfather, "Without further ado, I would like to invite my father to say a few words before he officially signs the transfer of the family trust." Grandfather Ezekiel slowly stood up. He waved away Tyson's offer of help. He walked to the podium, leaning heavily on his cane. He looked out at the crowd. He looked at his son, his daughter-in-law, his grandchildren. He adjusted the microphone. "Thank you, Desmond," he said, his voice raspy but clear. "You spoke of trust. You spoke of legacy. These are beautiful words." He paused. The room leaned in. "But words are cheap," Ezekiel said, his tone hardening. "Numbers, however, numbers never lie. Before I sign anything, before I hand over the empire I built, I think it is only fair that we show our shareholders exactly how this family has managed its assets over the last 3 years." My father's smile faltered. "What are you doing, father? This is not on the schedule." Grandfather ignored him. He looked straight at the camera recording the event, which was being live-streamed to the overflow room. "Transparency is the cornerstone of our business," he declared. "So tonight, instead of a speech, I have prepared a presentation." He pointed his cane at the massive screen behind them. "Zara, if you would be so kind." My father froze. My mother gasped. Tyson looked around wildly. I stepped out of the shadows. I walked up the stairs, my heels clicking rhythmically on the wood. The click of a judge's gavel. I stood next to my grandfather. I plugged my laptop into the podium console. "Hello, everyone," I said into the microphone. "My name is Zara Williams. You might know me as the daughter who works in administration. But tonight, I am here as the CEO of Z Audit, and I have some very interesting numbers to show you." I hit the spacebar. The screen behind us exploded into light. It did not show a celebratory montage. It showed a bank statement. "Let us begin." The giant screen behind the podium flickered to life, casting a stark white glow over the dimly lit ballroom. There was no fanfare, no introductory music, just the brutal clarity of a forensic spreadsheet projected 10 feet high. The first image was a bank wire transfer dated 3 years ago. $2 million leaving the Ezekiel Trust and entering a joint account controlled by Desmond and Viola Wilson. The crowd murmured. They recognized the date. They recognized the names. I clicked the remote in my hand. The slide changed. The money began to move. It flowed like a river of greed, splitting into tributaries that led directly to the vices of the people standing behind me. A red line traced $500,000 to the Wynn Casino in Las Vegas, labeled Tyson Wilson Gambling Debts. Another line traced $300,000 to a shell company in the Cayman Islands, linked to my father is personal expenses. A third line pointed to a series of transactions at luxury boutiques labeled Jessica Wilson Consulting Fees. I looked at the audience. The shock was palpable. The board members were whispering frantically. The socialites were covering their mouths. My family stood frozen on stage, trapped in the glare of the projector like deer in headlights. My father made a move to grab the microphone, but my grandfather slammed his cane down on his foot, pinning him in place. "Let her finish." Ezekiel growled, his voice amplified by the microphone. I clicked again. The screen changed to a video file. It was grainy black and white footage from the security camera in my father's study. The date stamp was from 2 days ago. The audio boomed through the ballroom speakers crystal clear. "We just need her signature," my father's voice echoed. "Ezekiel won't look that closely. We scan her old signature, we Photoshop it onto a new document." The ballroom gasped. I saw Senator Sterling cross his arms, his face hardening into stone. I saw the bank representatives in the front row pulling out their phones, likely calling their legal departments. The video continued. Tyson's laughter rang out. "Better crazy than broke, right?" Then the audio shifted to the recording from my pen. My mother's voice, shrill and cruel, filled the room. "You are nothing without us. Sign the paper or we will destroy you." I looked at my mother. She was shaking her head, mouthing the word no over and over again, as if she could deny the reality of her own voice. Jessica was clutching her diamond necklace, the one she bought with stolen money, looking as if she wanted to rip it off and swallow it. I clicked the remote one last time. The screen displayed a single document, the forged trust agreement with my childish signature pasted onto the bottom. Next to it was a digital analysis highlighting the pixelation around the signature, proving it was a copy. "Ladies and gentlemen," I said, my voice steady and cold. "You have just witnessed a masterclass in fraud. The people standing behind me did not just steal money. They stole a future. They forged documents to cover their tracks. They used identity theft to fund the clothes on their backs right now. And they tried to frame me, their own daughter and sister, as mentally unstable to protect their lies." I turned to look at them. They were small now. The glamour had evaporated, leaving only 4 terrified criminals in expensive costumes. But they made one mistake. I continued, turning back to the crowd. They forgot to check who I really was. They thought I was a secretary. They did not know that for the last 5 years I have been building Z Audit. A murmur of recognition rippled through the room. Z Audit was legendary in financial circles. It was the firm you called when you wanted to find the money someone hid in a Swiss bank account. My grandfather smiled. He wheeled his chair forward, taking the microphone from my father's limp hand. He looked at the crowd, his eyes shining with pride. "You came here tonight to meet the future of the Wilson legacy," he said. "And you have met her. She is not the man who stole from his own child. She is not the boy who gambled away his inheritance. She is the woman who caught them." He reached out and took my hand. "Ladies and gentlemen, may I introduce you to the person who conducted this investigation, the CEO of Z Audit, my sole heir, and the only Wilson worthy of the name, Zara." The applause started slowly, uncertain at first, then growing louder and louder until it filled the room. It was not polite applause. It was the sound of respect. It was the sound of power shifting. I stood there bathing in it, feeling the weight of 20 years of invisibility falling away. I was not the black sheep anymore. I was the shepherd, and I had just culled the wolves. The applause died down abruptly as the double doors at the back of the ballroom swung open again. This time it was not a guest. It was a phalanx of uniformed officers followed by Special Agent Miller and his team from the FBI. The air in the room changed instantly, from shock to electric tension. The click of heavy boots on the parquet floor echoed in the silence. My father, Desmond, tried to regain his composure. He straightened his tie, attempting to summon the arrogance that had protected him his entire life. He stepped to the edge of the stage, raising a hand as if to dismiss the servants. "Now see here," he boomed, his voice shaking slightly. "This is a private event. You have no jurisdiction here. This is a family misunderstanding. My daughter is clearly distraught," and Mr. Wilson, Agent Miller, interrupted, his voice cutting through the air like a knife. "You have the right to remain silent." Two agents moved up the stairs. They did not hesitate. They spun my father around and pulled his hands behind his back. The sound of handcuffs ratcheting shut was louder than any speech. My father looked at me, his eyes wide with disbelief. He mouthed the word, "Why?" I just stared back, my face a mask of stone. Tyson tried to run. It was a pathetic attempt. He bolted toward the side exit, knocking over a flower arrangement, but an officer tackled him before he made it 3 steps. He was screaming as they cuffed him, crying about how it wasn't his fault, how he just did what he was told. The golden child was tarnished now, dragging on the floor in his bespoke tuxedo. Then it was Jessica's turn. She stepped back, holding her hands up. Her face twisted in a desperate attempt at innocence. "Wait!" she shrieked, pointing a trembling finger at Tyson. "It was him. He made me do it. I didn't know anything about the forgery. I just spent the money he gave me. I am a victim here. I am pregnant. You cannot arrest a pregnant woman." I stepped up to the microphone one last time. "Actually, Jessica," I said, my voice echoing through the hall, "you are not pregnant. I have your medical records. You had a tubal ligation 4 years ago. And you are not a victim. You are an accomplice." I clicked the remote. A new slide appeared. It showed the credit card receipts from yesterday, the ones with her signature, the ones where she bought the diamonds she was wearing using a card she knew was in my name. "That is identity theft," I said, "and receiving stolen property, and conspiracy to commit wire fraud." The agents moved in. Jessica fought them, screaming profanities that made the society matrons clutch their pearls. They marched her off the stage, her heels dragging on the carpet. Finally, there was only Viola, my mother. She stood alone center stage in her gold dress. She looked at her husband being led away. She looked at her son weeping on the floor. She looked at her daughter-in-law cursing the world. And then she looked at me. She did not look angry anymore. She looked broken. She realized for the first time that the script had flipped. She was not the director. She was not even a player. She was the debris. She ran to me. She fell to her knees, grasping at the hem of my velvet dress, her mascara running down her face in black streaks. "Zara, baby, please," she wailed, her voice cracking. Look at what is happening. They are taking your father. They are taking your brother. You have to stop this. Tell them it was a mistake. Tell them we can fix it. I looked down at her. This was the woman who told me I was genetic dead end. This was the woman who bought a new face while I starved. We are family, she sobbed, clutching my leg. We are mother and daughter. You cannot let them do this to me. I raised you. I loved you. You loved the idea of me, I said quietly, but only when I was useful. You did not love me when I was hungry. You did not love me when I was alone. I signaled Agent Miller. He nodded. They did not arrest her. Not yet. Her name was not on the forged documents. She had been careful. She had let the men do the dirty work. But that did not mean she was free. Agent Miller stepped forward. Mrs. Wilson, you are not under arrest at this time. However, all assets belonging to Wilson Logistics and the Wilson Family Trust have been frozen pending a federal investigation. The property in Buckhead has been seized by the bank due to foreclosure on unpaid loans. You have 24 hours to vacate the premises. Viola gasped. She looked at me, her eyes wide with horror. Where will I go? She whispered. I have nowhere. I have no money. I looked at my grandfather. He nodded slowly, giving me permission to deliver the final blow. I leaned down close to her ear, so only she could hear me. You should have thought about that before you stole my future, I whispered. But do not worry, Mother. I have a solution for you. The flashing lights of the police cars outside illuminated the ballroom in chaotic bursts of red and blue. The guests were being ushered out by the hotel staff, their whispers filling the air like the buzzing of angry bees. My father, Tyson, and Jessica were gone, loaded into the back of squad cars. The dynasty was dead. Viola sat on the edge of the stage, weeping silently into her hands. She was a queen without a castle, a mother without children. I walked over to her. I did not offer a hand to help her up. Get up, Mother, I said. We are leaving. She looked up, hope flickering in her eyes. You are going to help me. I am going to take you home, I said. But it is not your home anymore. The drive back to the estate was silent. The gates were open. A foreclosure notice was already taped to the front door. The staff had left, taking whatever they could carry in lieu of the wages they hadn't been paid in months. The house was dark and cold. It felt like a tomb. Viola walked into the foyer, shivering in her gold dress. She looked around at the shadows. What are we doing here? She asked, her voice trembling. The bank said we have to leave. The bank owns the mortgage, I said, walking to the center of the room. But I own the bank is debt. I bought the note this morning, Mother. I own this house now, she gasped. You bought it, so we can stay. Oh, Zara, thank you. I knew you wouldn't abandon me. I knew you had a good heart. She reached for me, but I stepped back. I did not buy it for you, I said. I bought it because it is an asset, and assets need to be maintained. I turned on the lights. The harsh illumination revealed the dust on the chandeliers, the scuff marks on the floor, the decay hiding beneath the luxury. I am going to sell this place, I continued. But it needs work. It needs to be scrubbed from top to bottom. It needs the garden weeded. It needs the silver polished. And since you have nowhere to go and no money to pay rent, I am making you an offer. I pulled a contract out of my bag. It was a standard employment agreement. You can live here, I said. In the servant is quarters above the garage. You will have a roof over your head and food to eat. In exchange, you will maintain the property. You will clean. You will garden. You will do the work you thought you were too good for. She stared at me, her mouth agape. You want me to be the maid in my own house. It is not your house, I reminded her, sharp and cold. It is my house. And this is the only offer on the table. You can take it or you can sleep on the street. The choice is yours. She looked at the contract. She looked at her manicured hands. She looked at the silk wallpaper she had chosen 20 years ago. She began to cry again. Not the manipulative tears of before, but the tears of someone who realizes they have hit rock bottom. "I hate you," she whispered. "I know I said, but you will sign. Because you are a survivor, Viola. And survivors do whatever it takes." She signed. 6 months later, I drove my new Audi down the winding driveway of the Buckhead estate. The for sale sign was planted firmly in the front lawn. The grass was perfectly cut. The hedges were trimmed. I slowed the car as I passed the fountain. There was a woman on her knees scrubbing the marble coping. She was wearing a gray uniform stained with sweat and dirt. Her hair, once perfectly dyed, was now streaked with gray and pulled back in a messy bun. She looked tired. She looked old. It was Viola. She looked up as the car approached. She saw me through the tinted glass. She stopped scrubbing. For a moment our eyes met. I saw the resentment in hers, the burning shame. But I also saw the fear. She knew that I held the keys to her existence. I didn't roll down the window. I didn't wave. I didn't feel a surge of joy or a pang of guilt. I just felt balance. The scales had been righted. The debt had been paid. I pressed the accelerator. The car surged forward, leaving the estate behind, leaving the past behind. I had a meeting with my grandfather. We were opening a new branch of Z Audit in London. I had a flight to catch. I had a life to live, a life that was finally entirely my own. I drove through the gates and turned onto the main road. I didn't look back. Zara's journey reveals a powerful truth. Your worth is never defined by those who refuse to see it, even if they are family. When blood ties turn into chains of manipulation and financial abuse, your strongest defense is self-reliance and meticulous documentation. Zara proved that silence is not weakness. Often it is the quiet strategy of a winner waiting for the right moment to strike. The ultimate justice isn't found in revenge, but in building a life so successful and authentic that you no longer need the approval of those who betrayed you. If Zara's calculated victory gave you the courage to set boundaries in your own life, hit that like button and subscribe for more stories of justice served. Have you ever had to outsmart a toxic family member? Share your story in the comments below.